And I will call a Budget Committee meeting to order at 6:01.
All right, let's say the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Joe, you want to take attendance?
Sure, we'll start with roll call if you want to. Sam, if you want to start.
Samantha Kearns.
Laura Stevens.
Brian Mazer.
Olivia Welch-Erdahl.
Israel Carey.
Frank Hobbs.
Joe Alexander.
Jack Carbonell, school board rep.
Go ahead, Peter.
You can be with us.
Oh, I forgot. Okay, he is school board rep. Yes.
Yeah, I'm the school board rep tonight.
I didn't
For the
realize
budget
Jared's
committee.
on yours now.
Jared's not
Thank you, I got confused.
And the confused person is Peter Grigorokakis.
Allison DeCesare.
Just in time. Richard Manzo.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Representative.
Great.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back tonight. So we're going to do the second part of our presentations. But before we start, is there any public comment for tonight? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. So we're going to start with Maple Avenue. Brian, Scott, is there anything you guys want to say?
Yeah, we're going to start with Bartlett.
Oh, we're going to start with Bartlett. Okay.
So we're going to welcome Mrs. Pishka and Mrs. Creedup.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Yesterday's meeting I watched online, it seemed like it was really great response, a lot of conversation, so I look forward to today as well. So Bartlett Elementary School. The current budget is $3,619,679. The 2026 base will be $3,670,320, and then new is $6,719, which would bring the requested to $3,677 and $3,677,039, and the difference of $57,360. So our enrollment, going back from 2018 to now, you can see that we're starting a bit of a decrease this year, 180, kind of similar to last year. What's different about this year is we have 10 classrooms, 11 teachers, and so there are more students in each classroom. All the students are in the building, which is, I think, a benefit versus having students outside of the building in the portables. And the people who came to take the tour, I thought that, you asked a lot of good questions, and we talked about that as a benefit, even though it brought the class sizes up a little bit. So our projection is 175 students for this next school year.
Suzanne, I just wanted to also let the Budget Committee know, we informed them that we have 3 to 4 developments that are either proposed or that are going to be constructed, that we know one of them will definitely go to Bartlett. One is questionable to go to Bartlett, and then the third is more questionable to go to Bartlett. So that number could change pretty, for the 25-26 school year, and definitely for the 26-27 school year, based upon the construction and what types of families, move into those developments. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Allison.
Scott, do they have an anticipated date for any of those?
So a couple of things. The Bog Road development, which is, down the road from here, that one is they are going through final construction, and another, I know that had to redo some financing, but another entity is now finishing up that project. So I don't have a deadline, and maybe Kelly knows more on that.
Anticipated by the end of the year, around
Okay.
December.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, then we also have another development on Mast Road, and then another one in the Danis Park intersection. So those are the 3 that we know of, and they're larger ones, and they're you know, there are some of them that are three-bedroom townhouses, et cetera. So those have usually more of an impact than a one or two-bedroom apartment type thing.
Okay.
Sorry, Suzanne.
No, that,
All right.
thank you. So staffing overview, currently, and what we propose for next year. Classroom teachers, 11. Special education teachers, 3. And I just want to note that this last year, we reduced, it was a reduction. So we did have 4 special ed teachers the year, last year, previous year, and 12 classroom teachers. So 1 less classroom teacher, 1 less special ed teacher. And then library media, we have 1 full-time person. Reading specialist, the same. 2 Title I teachers. ESOL, we share with the district. She is there for 0.5. Interventionist, we have 1 full-time and 1 part-time. Art PE, we have 0.4, so 2 days. And music with strings, we have 2.5 days. Paraprofessionals, we have 12 for special education and 0.6 regular ed, that's the media specialist paraprofessional. Speech pathologist, we have 1 full-time. Occupational therapist, we have 0.7. And school psychologist, we share with the district, 0.3. 1 nurse full-time, full-time custodian during the day and 2 part-time at night. Admin assistants, we have 1 that's year-round and 1 that's just for school year. School counselor, 0.8, we share with Glen Lake. And then 2 administrators.
Go ahead, Allison.
Why do you have 1 less of the special educators and the classroom teachers? Is it a budget issue or staffing or just
Well,
necessity?
I know Scott talked about transfers yesterday. So there was a need at one of the other schools, more of a need than at Bartlett. So the decision was made to move a position to Mountain View to support the need.
Go ahead, Joe.
So with the anticipated increase in student population for these new developments, can we talk a little bit about the thought process that was behind the reduction in teachers? When we anticipate, in the increase in average class size, we anticipate we're going to be having more students in this school.
Yeah, I think how I looked at it is we have to do with what we have at the moment. I think last year, Maple Avenue, we had prepared for the Bog Road to open and then Factory Street to open, and we were looking at how many kids could we get. And instead of just feeling, paralyzed by the thoughts of what that might look like, we just moved ahead with what we had. And I think that's really how I looked at this year. I thought it was important that with the number of students to have 10 classrooms where kids can all be in the building for once was important. And having Unified Arts out in the portable where the kids are only there for 40 minutes seemed like a good decision. I think if we had a surge in December, then we'd have to talk about putting art and music back on a cart, utilizing the 2 classrooms that are in the portable. Again, if they were all 3rd graders, that would work out great, but they could be across the grades. And again, that's a whole nother challenge for us. But I think living in the moment has been,
So just correct me, we repurposed 1 classroom teacher for a 0.5 administrator position or a full administrator position. So we reduced
A full.
a full.
So, for disclosure, Darcy was the teacher.
Okay.
Okay, and now she's the assistant principal. And then a special education teacher that position is now at Mountain View based upon need.
Okay, so is it the district's plan when there's an increase in students to hire another teacher
Not
depending on the need of
No,
the?
not necessarily.
Because we're reducing the class sizes, so if it goes up so much by population, you're gonna need to hire a new teacher at some point. So we're increasing 0.5, we're adding an administrator, and we're reducing a teacher, and then there might be a need, we're saying, in a year to add another teacher position.
So our class sizes at Bartlett were getting very low. They were getting very low. So
Okay.
we felt that we could reduce the section. The special education teacher being moved to Mountain View, this is very typical for us. So we look at all of our positions in totality, and before we come to the budget committee and ask for new positions, I'm going to move positions around. This is very common. We do this every single year. So if there's a group of kids, we have a slight increased need in one school, we move positions over. We do this across all of our schools, across all of our departments.
So, Joe, also, in simple terms, if you look at that enrollment, you'll see that the enrollment at Bartlett dipped and the enrollment at Mountain View increased. So as a superintendent stated, every year, some people call it like zero-based budgeting. We do it, and in essence, that's what we do, because we look at our staffing, and then we try to move staffing around to determine what those needs are. And invariably, that means that if there's not a need in one school and there is a need in another, we then move those types of positions
Okay.
to try to keep it neutral.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
So,
Go ahead, Peter.
I heard you asking this last night too, Joe, so I'm just trying to figure out like what the purpose is. I was at the tour. I want to know, do you think that the plan for this year puts you in a better position to educate our children? The plan in terms of like what you're using, how you're using the building. I'm not an educator. I don't know your job. So how you're utilizing the building and how you're utilizing the resources we have, do you think that's the best use for this year?
Yes, I do. I think our numbers are not unreasonable. I mean, the highest class is 20,
Yeah.
so they're all in the building. It's efficient, it's effective. We have the downstairs, as you saw, all services. So again, we're not wasting time going over to a portable to pick up 2 students, go to another portable to pick up 2 more, and then go back to the service area. It's all in the same building downstairs, and now that children know the routine and time, they can walk down there and meet their teacher when they get their additional services. And class size is not, I mean, it's within that policy of 16 to 22.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Allison.
And again, I know this is a question that's not just for Bartlett, but with regard to the fact that we know these developments are coming, what's the mechanism for addressing the problem when we finally know what it is? And I get that you can't do it now, because who knows? But if come December, Bog Rose opens, and I don't even know how many potential kids of all ages you could have, it seems like January 1st, we could have a really big problem in this town with spacing and teachers, and so what's the plan? Because we know it's coming no matter what, right?
Well, so we've talked about a number of options. Bog Road presents a number of challenges for us. What's unknown is how many kids and how old they are and what grades. So if I pick up 50 to 75 kids in their grades 5 through 12, great, welcome to Goffstown. If we pick up 75 kids that are third graders, I've got a problem. So some of the options that I've discussed with the board is, so Bartlett has more capacity than Maple Ave. And when Mr. Demers and his team come up and talk about Maple Ave, you'll look at the numbers. We don't have the capacity to pick up more kids at Maple Ave. So one of the options I've proposed to the school board is considering the entire Bog Road development to be a single bus stop and to do a transfer directly to Bartlett for those students. That's one option that we're looking at. But much of this will depend upon what the numbers are and what we get. And what are we going to do for staffing? I'm going to go to the board and say, we have a problem, and I'm going to recommend that we tap into the 5% contingency fund. It's an emergency.
Right.
From my perspective, that's what it's for. In all likelihood, could I put 3 to 5 new positions in this budget that I could easily justify will be needed next year? Yeah, I think I could. I think I could. However, we recognize that we're on a default this year. It's the first time that's happened in 11 years in Goffstown for the school district. We recognize the significance of that. And as the budget committee saw yesterday, we set to keep our new increase in spending under $300,000, and we tried to have our percentage of increase at less than 4%. So those were the targets that we set, and we stayed to them. In all likelihood, the board is probably going to say to me, geez, Brian, I think you should have put a little more in the budget. That could be true. That could be true. So we haven't budgeted for any new anticipated positions due to growth.
And
Thanks,
Allison, if I
Oh.
could, like, when you look at the Mill Street, we've been tracking that one, and surprisingly, I think it was like 7 or 8 students, and 2 were Maple Avenue. So it didn't have, as Suzanne mentioned, we kind of were going with, when we did that projection, we were nervous, all of us. But Bog Road didn't open yet, and then Mill Street did not materialize. So you just don't know. So rather than hiring in anticipation of what could happen,
yeah.
we're kind of waiting. It's more of a wait and see, because you just don't know how many students are elementary, middle, and high.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that makes sense, but I figured you guys had a plan,
Yeah.
or there was going to be a process, because it could be a big problem.
Yes.
And it might not be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all adults and there's not many kids.
It's
Who knows?
really hard to
Right, to
know
guess.
and to predict. So some of the other developments that I think of kind of in the Pinardville area, we thought we'd get more kids than we did. So we kind of don't know.
Yeah.
And really, I think Mrs. Pishka's kind of approach to see what comes, see what the numbers look like, and then make, we have to be nimble. We have to be able to move. We have to be able to move resources. And I think we also have to make sure we go to the board and we ask for more when we need it. And the board has been very supportive when we've needed additional resources. And as you can clearly see from the cost per pupil, we're kind of doing it on the cheap, and we're doing a good job.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so Samantha had her hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back 2 slides to the historical enrollment. Can you tell me currently how many first grade classes you have?
2.
Okay. And I'm going to ask the same thing for second grade
2,
and third
3,
and fourth.
and 3.
And then my next question is going to be on the staffing overview. You told us who gets shared with the district and who gets, are there any other of these half or partial positions that aren't 100% full-time that are shared with other schools or or with the district?
Physical
the staffing
education is
list?
shared with Maple.
Yeah, so like is that 0.5 interventionist, are they shared with Glen Lake?
The .5 interventionist was looking for a full-time position, so we partnered with Mountain View, who was looking for a part-time position as well, and we hired that person
Okay.
to share
Okay.
those jobs. So that worked out very nicely for both of us.
And then your school psychologist, you said they're shared with the district. And the
Yes.
school counselor is shared with Glen Lake.
Yes.
And then, but art and PE and music, they're not shared with another school at all.
PE, one of them, we have 2 PE teachers right now. One is shared with Maple Avenue. And then the other person, we were not able to secure a person for a .2 position, so we have a long-term sub in there.
Okay.
And we have not hired for music. We lost our music teacher, and the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been working on music lesson plans for the subs that come in twice a week.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Are there
I
any,
know how to write lesson plans, but I'm not a musician.
Are there any other positions that are vacant?
We have a paraprofessional position, and then we have one person on long-term leave that's a
Okay.
paraprofessional, so we're down 2 every day.
Okay. Thanks.
Peter, go ahead.
Did we lose that music teacher to another district? Or
No, nothing to do with that.
You don't have to say anymore. Thank you.
All right, so are we set? Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. The number of Title I teachers, is that determined by demographics in the school and needs?
So we qualify for Title I, and yes, we hired 2 teachers.
All right, Suzanne, I think you can finish.
Okay, thanks. Scott, I don't want that to count against my time. All those questions. So on here, basically the noteworthy changes, as was mentioned yesterday, the software costs and building maintenance are really what make up that, the new for fiscal year 2026. And then, of course, the salary and benefit lines change as the contract goes from year to year. Are there any other questions?
And not to count against your time, I appreciate the sense of humor. There was, the budget committee doesn't have it, but the school board does. You'll get this eventually. Page 104, 105, and 106. There were, remember I mentioned like 100 budget transfers? Like, there was a lot of them that were done at the Bartlett School to try to keep any increases that were needed in certain lines to, they came from other budget lines to try to keep the new spending at a minimum. So just recognize that, and I'll provide that 100, to you when you get your packets. But I wanted the board to know that's what was done.
All right, anybody have any other questions for Bartlett? All right, seeing none, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
So now it's Maple.
Mr. Demers. Mrs. Johnson, slowly. And Mrs. Ryu.
Hi, guys, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. So I'm Bill Demers. I'm the principal at Maple Ave. With me tonight is Mrs. Jill Ryu, our Dean of Students, and Mrs. Lisa Johnson, our Assistant Principal. So we'll go through this. I'm going to try to shatter Suzanne's time here since we are down overall. So if we take a look here, our FY25 budget is $6,813,567. Our FY26 base is $6,782,457. FY26 new, $23,120. And FY26 requested, $6,805,577. And that difference is a negative of $7,990. Next slide is our enrollment. So we are projecting to be down a little bit next year, just by a few students. Looks like historically our incoming first grade numbers have dropped a little bit, so we're looking at 123 for next year in first grade, 121 in second grade, and 135 each in third and fourth grade for a total of 514 students. And I believe we are at right on 519 right now. Our projected class sizes are in a pretty good spot for next year. We have in first grade, we have 6 classes in each grade level. So in first grade, we're projected to be at just over 20 students per class. Grade 2, same thing, just a little over 20 students. It's tough when you're talking about 0.1 students. Grade 3, we are a bit over 22 per class, and same in grade 4. So when you average those all together, we're just a smidge over 21 students per class, which is a sweet spot. Our current staffing, we have 24 classroom teachers throughout grades 1 through 4, 6 in each grade level, and we have a social learning teacher as well who works with all students in the building. We have a reading specialist, 5 special educators, 3 literacy and math support teachers, and 2 of those case managed students as well. We have some related service providers. We have 1 occupational therapist, 1.6 speech, so we have 1 full-time position, and then another staff member who comes in 3 days a week to work with students. We have 1 guidance or school counselor and a 0.7 psychologist that we share with Bartlett and Glen Lake. We have 22 paraprofessionals. 20 of those are in special education. We have 1 paraeducator in our library and 1 registered behavior technician as well. We have 4 unified arts teachers, 1 in art, 1 in music, 0.8 PE. Mr. Brooks goes over to Bartlett 1 day a week, and we also have our library media specialist. We have 1 nurse, 3 building administrators, and 3 administrative assistants.
Go ahead, Brian. Hang on, Mr. Demers.
Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome.
I have a question, and I'm trying to rack my brain because the Dean of Students position, it didn't exist when I grew up in high school or even elementary and middle school.
Sure.
So can someone share me what's a day of the life of dean of students, the roles and responsibilities? Because to me, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you do, to be honest with you.
Sure. So the day in the life of a dean of students. I handle a lot of student behaviors, whether it be bus write-ups or write-ups with students in the classroom. I'm also in the classrooms trying to support teachers to make sure that, you know, if they need help in certain areas, whether it be classroom management or how to organize something. I've been working with teachers doing that as well. I'm trying to think. I do a lot of bus behavior, positive behavior, and encouraging that.
504.
I also run the 504s, so I am the case manager and coordinator for all 504s in the building as well.
So 504s are accommodations that students need in order
To access the
Section
curriculum.
504
Right,
of the
right.
Rehabilitation Act
Yeah.
of 1973.
So Wendy wants to add to it. Go ahead, Wendy.
Ms. Ryu also is in charge of a lot of our assessments that we do over at Maple Avenue, so she does a lot of the planning and coordinating that happens with all of our assessments. That's our in-house assessments, our NWEA, as well as our New Hampshire state testing as well. I'm glad Scott talked about the 504 piece. Jill also has been trained in supervision and evaluation, so coaching our teachers as well is part of her new responsibilities.
And Brian, if I may,
ahead.
what's slightly different, each school is a little different. So
Sure.
it's probably worth explaining this as each school comes up. And Mr. Lacasse will be up next, and he can tell you more about being a dean of students. But Mrs. Johnson, her role is the assistant principal, but a majority of her work is focused on special education. So for some reason, historically, the position was never called a special education facilitator, but that's a lot of what Mrs. Johnson does. So the oversight of all of our special education students, all those meetings, all of that oversight, Lisa does that as well.
Okay. So thank you. And I think it sounds like it's mostly behavioral intervention in a sense, what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of it, yeah.
So I'm trying to do a flashback into when I went to school, like, who handled that? I don't even know.
Well, you were so well behaved.
I'm not talking about me, it's for other students.
Model child.
The ruler.
So Joe had his
I
hand up.
just, yeah. The, Ms. Rio, the position for Dean of Students came from ESSER grant funding, right? Like
No.
a few years ago? Or was that not? I'm
Yeah,
trying to figure out
We had, that
when
was
the
at,
impetus
that was
of.
at, that was Mike McMurray, where we funded that, but that was not Jill's position.
We
Okay.
funded, you're right,
2
Joe.
years
We-
of it.
We funded
funded 2 years of it from the
2
grant
years of
funding.
it,
Right.
but then
Yes.
But
that
the position has always been there? When was the position created for Dean of Students?
This
Here?
position was created about 3 years ago,
Okay.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
2 years ago.
It was moved from, what I remember, it was moved from the alt building.
Alt building.
That's right,
Okay.
that's right.
Thank you.
So as a
ahead,
follow-up,
Brian.
so if that position is only 2 years old, who filled that position prior?
It didn't exist.
Mrs.
But
Johnson.
who is, so you're taking the like, behavioral intervention?
The principal and assistant principal.
Okay.
So typically, what would have happened in most places is the assistant principal is also responsible for a lot of the disciplinary
Yeah.
pieces and the supervision pieces. And in some of the schools, we have a separate special education facilitator, that's a separate full-time position. When I first took this position, it was a little easier to split those two positions, but our special education population has increased significantly. It's more than doubled since I took this job. So that position, when Mrs. Pishka was here last year, I had to pass a lot of, or the past few years, I had to pass a lot of the traditional assistant principal responsibilities
Okay.
to Mrs. Pishka. So when we asked for that third administrator, this is how we structured it, to try
Okay.
to make sure everything got covered.
Thank you.
Are you all set?
Yes.
And I just want to also say that the impetus also was the rising enrollment. So we had 435 students, 460 students now, so you get to a certain point, and then you see the increased behavioral issues. It was becoming almost untenable for two people to do that, and that was the reason for putting that position in, to make it more manageable, given the circumstances of enrollment and the increased behavior issues and complexity of the special education cases. So it's a kind of a threefold reason.
All right. I think you guys can continue now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, on to noteworthy changes. That first line laptop lease, there's an increase of $8,132 to get new teacher and some student laptops. We had an increase in special education software. That $1,095 is just due to price increases from the vendors. The next student accounts financial software, that's a new product for us at Maple, and it sounds like that's getting spread throughout the district, whereas Glen Lake only had that previously. Testing, same thing, we get headsets every year for every student in the school to be able to utilize for NEWA and New Hampshire SAS testing. And they keep those in the classrooms for the kids to use throughout the year, and those just went up in price like most things did this year. We did have a reduction of a 0.5 nurse, and that position was repurposed for the IT help desk technician.
Now, that position was ESSER funded, that part-time nurse.
Okay. Thank you. Continuing on, voice communication, increased costs related to the new cloud-based telephone system. Facilities maintenance, increased cost based on actuals in certain mandated inspections. And then finally, supplies, increased cost based on actuals.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you. The IT help desk position, is that specific, that's not specific to Maple Ave, right? That's the
No,
district
district.
person?
I believe so, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
But that's also an example, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
that when I talked last night about a multi-year vision of how we need to increase our IT department, that's a great example of it. So we're anticipating as we get, and so I don't want to kind of get ahead of myself. This is the FY26 budget, but it's good for the budget committee to be aware that we're planning on multiple fiscal years of increasing IT support.
And again, Bill, not to take away from your time, but we were kind of joking about the lights because these are the new LED lights. And I asked Ben Tabor, one of our custodial staff, I'm like, hey, how do I just take off this bank? He goes, oh, you don't have the app? I'm like, no. So there is an app that folks use at different schools, I guess, and there's also like an iPad where you can then dim and turn off different banks of lights. And so it's more, everything is IT and techie. I don't know how else to say it, but kind of like driving a car now. It's like, you gotta know what to do. Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. I have a follow-up question. So I noticed you have one registered behavioral technician. So as a dean of students in this particular function, where does one begin and one end? Like, what is the interplay? What's the difference?
I can answer that.
Okay.
Yep. So throughout the district, we do have a board-certified behavior analyst, or BCBA, who is responsible for all of the schools in the district. So in our building, the registered behavior technician is a paraprofessional, so it's but who has specialized instruction in behavior. She has certification. She works sort of hand in hand with the BCBA in our and will come in and help to support students who have behavior plans. So she might go in and do some modeling of how to implement behavior plans so that the paraprofessionals, the one-on-one paraprofessionals, know how to do that. She helps with data collection. She helps with a lot with our students who are having challenges. If a child's having a difficult time, and we need an additional staff member to go help a child who's having a difficult time in the playground. And these are children who have behavior plans and who have paraprofessionals who are working with them. She also does step in if we have one-on-one paraprofessionals who are out for any reason. She will step in and be the one who's working with that student because she knows all of the behavior plans, she knows all of the strategies to work with those kids, and she knows the staff in the classrooms. Currently, we have her actually working as a one-on-one paraprofessional because we are down a paraprofessional. We had an additional student move in, so we are looking to hire another paraprofessional. So right now, that is what she's doing. But it's different than the day-to-day child who's having, who had an issue on the bus, or somebody a couple kids who got into an altercation on the playground, or somebody who threw food in the cafeteria. She's more working specifically with those students who have more intense needs and has a lot more training and knowledge of those students.
Okay, so different layer or level.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would definitely be what we call tier 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Go ahead, Olivia.
Hi. I think we're hearing already, just with the couple of schools we've done already, that there's a huge increase in the special ed needs. Is that something that's being taken into consideration with the different developments as well? that special ed is increasing at every level, where Glen Lake is needing more and more and more, which then, hopefully needs get met prior to moving up into the elementary level. How are those anticipations being met?
So I just want to clarify your question. You're talking about with the new housing
Well,
development?
I'm sorry to make that confusing.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
But that with the younger years moving up into the elementary schools with Bartlett and then with Maple Ave for you guys, I guess I'm also concerned that while it's impressive that your budget is lower than it was, that there's the constant increase of special ed needs that we can expect, it seems, to continue. So do you feel that you're able to meet all the needs of the students that are increasing the numbers of special ed?
I do. At this point, I do.
Okay.
I think we haven't had an increase in our special education staff in many years, but I think that the difference is we figured out ways to be very efficient. So the students are really getting the services that they require. Having our interventionists, we have those 3 interventionists, and two of them are also special education certified, so they are able to pick up some of those students as well. We really try to focus on student needs, not on whether the student has an IEP and the student doesn't. So we try to make sure that we're being very efficient. If students have needs and they can be grouped together, we have them working together. So I think we've just gotten better at using our resources creatively. And I do have to say, back to the RBT, the Registered Behavior Technician, that has been very, very instrumental in helping free up some time, because in the past we might have had to have a special educator or one of our speech providers or even the guidance counselor go and assist with some of those behaviors or assist with some of that training. And with having this person dedicated to be able to do that, that frees the other professionals up to do their jobs, and they're the only ones that can do those jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. So is the decrease, just because it's a seemingly random amount, is that just the repurposed nurse? What is the decrease?
I'm assuming that is part of it, and I think a lot of it is based on actuals. I know when I met with Scott this summer, we went through, looked at actuals reduced here, did some of the budget transfers that he had mentioned earlier to fill in the needs in other places too. But yeah, certainly losing half a professional staff member is going to reduce things.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was
quite a bit.
anything more, but if it's actuals, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, Peter, did you have your hand up?
And it kind of goes along with what's being discussed. So in the budget overview, right, I see a reduction in the base. Is that because, honestly, these numbers we're talking about, it's kind of funny when we're talking about like $6 million and then we're talking about like a $30,000 difference, right? And we start thinking like, oh man, it's gone down, it's gone up. It's like, that's the same. But either way, I still see the difference, right? There's a small difference between the budget from 25 and the base of 26. Is that mainly like contractual obligations being less, like, or is that shifting?
Yeah,
that
so
we're
if
talking
you've
about?
got, obviously, that one shift, you also have staff that may have staff turnover when you have maybe a teacher that retires, another one that comes in, so you might see some of that at smaller type schools. You don't see it as, it's not as prevalent, I'd say, at the high school, the middle school, because they have a lot more people in those buildings, but in our smaller buildings, you could have 2 or 3 retirements or people move buildings, and they were at a higher salary, and we brought somebody in at a lower salary or lower, they didn't take a certain health insurance plan. So it's not uncommon, to see that. And then, as Bill mentioned, we sat down for an hour or so and we were looking at the actuals, and we made some changes there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else, questions, comments for Maple Avenue? All right, seeing none. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mountain View.
Mrs. Milligan and team.
Entourage.
Each new school adds a new person.
They've been busy.
I like that.
We get bigger and bigger. I was going to skip introduction so we could be faster, but I won't do that. So, good evening. I want to introduce my team. So, Mark Lacasse is our Dean of Students. Mrs. Brandy Williams is my assistant principal, and then we have Lindsay Phillips, who is our special ed coordinator, and Jess Milligan, principal. First, I want to thank those of you who came to do the tour of our school. There were some really great questions that led to some great conversations, so thank you for doing that. We'll start. So our 2025 budget is $12,004,660. Our base is $12,758,194. Our new is $47,274. The requested, it's $12,805,468, and then the difference is $800,808. In terms of enrollment, going into the 25-26, our estimated increase in 5th grade is a little bit, and we get those class sizes by reaching out to Bartlett and Maple. This year, if you look at 7th grade, we do get the new Boston students starting in 7th grade, so there's always a little bit of a bubble. 2 years ago, we had a rather large increase in new Boston students than typical. Those students now are in 8th grade, so they'll be leaving, so there is a dip for our 8th grade for that school year. Our projected class size is a little misleading because we do in middle school, in 7th and 8th grade, we have classes like algebra and geometry and accelerated math. So the class sizes are not as clean as they would be in 5th and 6th, where we just divide kids up. So in terms of current staffing, we have 40 core content teachers. In this, we have 4 reading literacy teachers and accelerated math total. 18 special educators, and this includes a part-time OT, part-time speech and language, part-time PT, and then our school psychologist and our ESL teacher that we share. We have 13 unified arts teachers, and this does include our 2 Spanish teachers. 0.5 Title I, and 31 paraprofessionals. This includes our 2 part-time media support people who split the day. 4 school counseling staff, 1 librarian, 2 nurses, 5 administrative assistants, and 2 of those split the day for part-time, and 5 administrators. The person that's not here right now is Josh Lewis, who is our curriculum coordinator, and he was here last night giving the presentation on the digital integration class. Changes. So we have an increase in...
Hang on 1 second,
Oh,
Mrs.
sure,
Milligan.
go ahead.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Brian.
have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Sure.
Yep.
So I brought this up with your school because between yourself and high school, you have the most administrative assistants and administrators. Can you educate me or give me more information on what those positions are, what they do, daily life? So I'm still understanding what they do to support yourself, but the broader school.
Sure. So part of the reason for the increase is we have close to 900 students in our building. Obviously, kids from grades 5 to 8 have a lot of different needs, more so than I would say elementary in terms of those are some tough years for kids. So for lots of different reasons. So I think the increase is due to the need for student support, but I'll let each person kind of talk a little bit about what they do for our school. So actually, why don't we start with you, Lindsay?
Sure. So at MBMS, we have about 190 identified students. So as you can see, that equates to quite a few IEP meetings per day. I average about 5 to 6 IEP meetings per day, about 5 to 6 hours a day of meetings just for IEPs. I'm also in charge of supervision evaluation of the 18 staff and the 30 paraprofessionals. So I do evaluation, supervision, that sort of things with staff. I also oversee, we have more of a complex Flex 1 autism and more complex student needs program that I oversee, respond to a lot of issues in that room. We also have a Flex 3 behavioral program that I oversee and collaborate with staff on that. I respond to, we're pretty collaborative when we respond to crises, student behaviors. Mark has a lot of duties outside of just behavior that he has to deal with, so we kind of pick up the slack in those departments when we have time. Yeah, that's pretty much my day.
Hang on, Scott wants to
Lindsay,
interject.
just because I know what you do and these folks don't, when you talk about these IEP meetings,
Sure.
who is involved in an IEP meeting?
Sure.
IEP meeting, and how many people are usually in those meetings, and how long do they last?
Sure, so we have different types of IEP meetings. Every student automatically gets a standard annual IEP meeting. That's where we review an individualized education plan. It takes about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. We go through the plan with families. Regular education teachers participate, special education teachers participate. And as the LEA, my job is to kind of direct the meeting, make sure it stays on course, make sure parent concerns are answered, take meeting minutes, that sort of thing. We have evaluations, so anytime a child is identified for an individual education plan or the parent or teacher refers a student, we have to go through that referral process. That looks like a meeting to hear parent concerns. We determine from there whether or not we're going to test for a disability. We'll go through that process. We meet to review testing results. That's usually done by a school psychologist and a case manager. We identify the student. We then develop as a team an individualized education plan that we review as a team. There are progress meetings. Sometimes parents just want to make sure their kid's on track and that everything's going okay. And we get the team together and we review the student's plan, make sure that we're meeting the needs of the IEP and of the student. There could be a manifestation meeting, which means if a student is suspended from school and they have an IEP, we have to meet after a certain amount of days to determine whether that student's behavior is a result of their disability or it's a result of just conduct. So those are just different types of meetings we have throughout the year for IEPs.
And Lindsay, one more question. You have 190 identified students. All of them have these, and I know the answer to this, but I want the budget
sure.
committee to know. Scheduling has to get done, and we talked about that administrative assistant. Presumably that administrative assistant schedules these meetings, and there's a little bit of documentation involved in this?
Yeah, so there's a scheduling process through Outlook for that, but there's also, our system is called Nessus. It's a statewide system that we use to document IEPs. That's so if we get a student from Manchester, our administrative assistant would then take the IEP, transfer it to our program, review that with me, and then we would have the meeting to make sure that everything aligns. So our
If I could just add, this Nessus is a state system.
Yes.
This is not something that we choose to do. This is another mandated system.
Correct. So our administrative assistant is really crucial in kind of learning that Nessus system and helping me input data. When I'm at meetings or I'm doing something else, that administrative assistant can step up. She can print IEPs if parents recommend or need them. She can go and update. We're under a lot of deadlines in special education, so she's really crucial in helping us identify and update our systems for statewide funding. I don't know if you know about this, but funding sometimes for special education is done partially through Nessus, meaning we need to be in compliance with Nessus to get some proper funding. So it's
Well, it's not really proper.
No.
It's not proper.
To get the bottom of the barrel.
To get the bare minimum, the state does go into look into Nessus to make sure we're doing our job and we're in compliance. So my administrative assistant has been wonderful in helping us with that as well.
And one more, because Brian and Israel, we talked about this before, Medicaid reimbursements, that would also go through your department as well in terms of all the documentation needed and to
Yes.
substantiate that?
Yes, our administrative assistant collects the service logs. There's billable and non-billable items in special education. So if it's medically necessary, which I oversee as well as my administrative assistant, we have to make sure that we're billing for the proper things and that we're getting reimbursement for those things.
So I'll speak to your question about the administrative assistants. So we have two administrative assistants in the front that split the day. So one works the morning, one works in the afternoon. They're the first line that first person parents see when they come in the door. So
Receptionist.
Yeah, so they do lots of things throughout the day. Greet parents, take phone calls. They help with attendance. A whole world of things.
Just talk about the role that administrative assistants play in school safety. So when you think about evacuations, student accountability, making sure that we have all the kids, talk about their role with that.
So we actually just had our fire drill last month and we saw it all kind of come into play. We did a extended evacuation. So they come out with all the attendance sheets. They come out, they're the ones that really help with the accountability. They call the stations once children are settled outside. We check to see if kids are with their teachers, and if someone is not, then they look at the attendance sheet to see if somebody was dismissed. Are they not here today? And then if they're with a specialist. So they're really instrumental in making sure that those pieces all come together. Also, obviously being the first line, those people being consistent know most of the families. They know if they're IDing parents coming in if they're not recognizing them. when parents come in, we also have an alert in our Power School system if parents aren't supposed to pick up a kid or if it's somebody that's not familiar to a family. So they have a lot of that information as well. They also greet children and staff as they come into the office in the morning. If they need anything, they generally direct. They're pretty instrumental in how the office works. We also have admin assistants help us with registration. That's another big piece because there's lots of pieces to that. We have our student account system that they manage, a whole world of things. So that's just to name a few. Do you want to speak to your role?
Sure. So I'm the assistant principal at Mountain View. As Joe Rio, I oversee the 504s at Mountain View Middle School. I work closely with the school counselors a lot during the day to support students who might be in a mental health crisis or who need some facilitation with their parents. I oversee a lot of committees, and a big part of my job is to supervise and evaluate teachers. Josh and I kind of split the regular ed portion of life, and I try to help Lindsay as much as I can. I spend a lot of time, what else do I do all day?
Student activities.
I oversee student activities. I work with MVP closely. They're our parent organization group who, again, shout out, thank you for all you do.
You do a lot of
supporting your
facilities.
teachers.
A lot of facilities. I work with Dawn and Randy and making sure that we have everything we need along with Jessica. Jess and I tag team a lot on responsibilities. We work together on the budget. We do a lot of hiring together with Josh. It's a good team.
And Mr. Lacasse is new to the role,
And
fresh out of the
amazing.
classroom, so he can give you the real skinny on the Dean of Students role.
Well, I can tell you what, for the last 5 weeks, I've done as the Dean of Students. One of my big responsibilities on a day-to-day basis is bus duty. And when there's arrival in the morning, there's about 25 minutes before school starts. So I'm in charge of overseeing the duty for all the teachers to make sure that they're there in the different spots to keep the kids safe and in line for that time period. I'm also in the cafeteria for all of the lunches. So we have 5th grade lunch, 6th grade lunch, and 3 7th and 8th grade lunches. So 5 lunches I'm in the cafeteria with them, with teachers who are on duty, but I'm overseeing that. And then also the duties for the afternoon, and sometimes bus dismissal can take up to 30 to 40 minutes to finally get all the kids out of the school, and the bus is there. My major job in between that is student discipline. So when teachers are very good at handling what needs to be handled within the classroom, but when there's behaviors that extend outside of the classroom, then they fill out an office referral, and then I meet with those students and do my best to do a full investigation to find out every side of the story, because students always tell the truth. I'm learning that, never lie. So I do my best to find out all sides of the story and then spend a lot of time communicating with parents. Mr. Bulkey told me that I should keep a phone log, and my phone log is almost full already from the amount of times that I've called parents. It's quite a bit, and I'm getting really good at, making those phone calls. I also walk through the classrooms as much as possible because it's important for the students and staff to see me. So I try to be a support for everyone, right? I want students to feel supported by me, that they can come to me when they need help. But at the same time, I want staff to feel supported by me, like I can see the struggles they're having with certain students, so they can reach out to me for help too. So I just try to be as visible as much as possible.
And Josh isn't here, but I can speak to his role. So Josh is our curriculum coordinator in the building, so he organizes all the testing, and we are probably the most tested grade school in the district because we have so many grade levels. So he organizes all the testing. He's in charge of overseeing the curriculum for the building, and obviously with Wendy's help. But then he is also in charge of the supervision and evaluation process. So he meets with all of the teachers who need to write their plans for the year. He's a big support for our new teachers, making sure they're on track, and then obviously observing teachers and things like that. So he has a pretty big job.
He does all of our testing.
Oh,
too.
yeah, all of the testing. Yeah. Do you want to know what I do?
Scott.
I don't know.
Scott, go ahead, Scott.
No, I just wanted, I picked up on a theme here, and I want to, if you look at what's on your screen or in front of you, you have over 100 employees in a building with 5 administrators. I worked in the private sector for almost 30 years, and the span of control for me as a manager, and even as you go higher in the organization, was about 7 to 10 people was the average span of control. I have friends in the military, and you could have a squad that is 7 to 20 people type of thing. So it's not uncommon. But the other thing that's a big factor, and I know Jess deals with this, it's the potentially 1,600 parents that you have to deal with, ranging from my student left their Stanley water bottle, can you help look for it, to a significant behavioral type issue. And I think we are living in a different environment where parents don't have a problem calling about a water bottle. And that didn't really happen, say, 15 years ago. And when we talk about testing, we never had the level of testing and the complexities of all of that. So there's so many things that are different than even 5 to 10 years ago, much less 20. Which require, a certain degree of oversight. And there, like I mentioned before, tons and tons of compliance, whether it be special ed, 504 plans,
Bullying
bullying,
investigations,
safety.
cyberbullying.
Let's not forget, last week, we took most of these people offline to deal with investigations, et cetera. This is the world that we live in, and we didn't live in the same world 10, 15, 20 years ago. So, thus the need.
Go ahead, Allison.
I generally would not want to speak to what you guys all just described, but I actually had the privilege of being in the middle school last week, I think, for an IEP meeting, and then was waiting in the front office for my kids. And I could not believe the poor woman sitting at the front desk, but how she managed it. And the parents coming in, and the phone ringing, and 2 gentlemen that were sent down to the principal's office to have a meeting because they were misbehaving. It was a lie. It was a lie. All a lie. But I was so impressed as I just stood there waiting quietly and watched everybody. And Lindsay said hello to me in the office. And it was a well-oiled machine, but one I would not want to be involved in because it was controlled chaos, but they rocked it, and everything they described is exactly the way it was. So if you want to really see what they do, just go about, 2:30 in the afternoon and stand in the office off on the corner and just watch it all unfold. It was beautiful.
Did that answer your question?
It did. I apologize for the very broad question. but
No, I
appreciate
think it's
the
good for
responses.
people to know.
Yeah.
No, I think that was a great question. I forgot my place though, hold on. Okay, so the changes. So our laptop leases, $10,144 for the new teacher and partial student laptop leases. The 1,100 function supply lines, obviously just the nature of the beast, that we've had increases across the board in actual spending. Our furniture line, $4,000 for replacement furniture. We try to replace 4 to 5, or our hope is to replace furniture in 4 to 5 classrooms per year because the furniture, most of it is original to the 30-year-old building. And as we're seeing more broken desks, more broken chairs, so we're trying to replace as we go. And we have noticed a difference in children respecting. They are being respectful of the equipment when it's new and it's nice. So we're trying to keep that going. The student account financial software, that is for all buildings except for Glen Lake. $2,000, we have a new cost increase for our officials and assigners, and that's for our sports teams. Just the increase in cost there. And for some sports, I know that they are asking for additional people to help with those responsibilities. $4,000 in replacement cycle for team uniforms, and that's on a rotating schedule. We have cost increases for athletic dues and fees. Media center books are, we have an increase due to increased costs. $3,000 for media center electronic information, and this includes like our World Book Online, our Gale subscription that we split with the high school, and ebooks. And then $1,000 increased costs, there's the ebooks, the increased cost of our ebooks. $2,300 for an increased cost of the end of year recognition graduation ceremonies. I know that was brought to the school board depending on what the plan is for this year. The cost did increase last year, so we had to move some things around to pay for our promotion. $3,000 increased cost of water and sewer. nothing we can control there. $1,500 for increased facility maintenance costs, and again, 30-year-old building, but I do have to say, I am very grateful for the things that have been done to our building, the new locker room floor, painting cycle, so the building does look great. We've got a little ways to go, but I'm very grateful. Increased facility repair cost, $2,500 increase. I'm sorry, $2,050. $2,500 increased cost of facility supplies, and that's our hand soap, our paper towels, just the cost of things going up. $5,000 for our NEASC visit. Every 5 years, we have a visit, and we have to keep that accreditation as part of our agreement with New Boston, but we have to pay for food and lodging when they come, when that group comes to do our accreditation. And
How many people are in that group?
questions?
Go ahead, Frank.
How many people are in that group?
Wendy, how many came last time?
So, to be honest with you, this is a new process that NEASC has started. It used to be that they would only come every 10 years and they'd come with a really large group. They moved to 2 different site visits now. They have what they call a mini visit after 5 years, then a big visit after 10. So, from my understanding, they're gonna bring 6 to 8 people to that visit.
And those people typically are educators in other communities that are part of, they volunteer their time with NEASC, so all we pay for that is the kind of their costs, but that's a requirement in our area agreement. And just in case anyone didn't know, that's the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and per the area agreement with New Boston, we have one of the very few accredited middle schools in the state of New Hampshire.
Good, Frank.
And that analysis or that meeting takes roughly how long? For the 6 to 8 people?
For the mini visit, it depends on how they break it down. There's sometimes where they'll come and they'll spend 2 full days in the building. Other times they'll come and they'll do a partial day and then a full day. Honestly, it depends on the report that Mountain View will submit before the visit. They'll look and see what they can do virtually and then what they're able to see in person. So that will depend on the report that Mountain View will
But
submit.
typically 2 days, Wendy?
Typically, it's 2 days.
How many is it for the high school, Mrs. McCann?
3.5?
So slightly larger at the high school.
So 6 to 8 people, 2 days, 5,000 is for lodging?
And food.
Lodging, food, and mileage.
Travel, yeah.
Are you all set, Frank?
All set, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I realize like this is part of our area agreement, so it's not like we can cut or change this number anyways. But what would happen, you said our middle school is one of the few middle schools in the state that is accredited. What would happen if we were not accredited?
Well, the short answer is you'd be in default of your area agreement with New Boston.
There's a penalty
Okay.
for that.
If we didn't have an area agreement with New Boston?
Then it would be fine.
Okay. It would, like,
So in the state of New Hampshire, the last I checked, are there maybe 5 to 10 middle schools that have gone through the accreditation process. Wendy could speak to this more than anyone, because when we initially did this process, Wendy did the whole package. I think it makes us a better school. Anytime that you have a group of regional experts who have diverse backgrounds and experiences that comes to a school and does a professional review and meets with teachers and looks at your goals and looks at all your submissions, I think that sharpens our game. I think it makes us a better school.
are other, I guess, multi-town schools accredited as well? Like
Typically, high schools are all
Okay.
accredited. So I
Right.
would say every high school in the state of New Hampshire is accredited, most of them through the NEASC organization. Middle schools, again, I think it's like in that 5 to 8 kind of range. I don't know, I haven't seen the numbers in a while.
It's small in New Hampshire. It's much larger in other states like Massachusetts, where they have more middle schools that go through that accreditation process.
Okay. Right. And like I said, I realize we can't change this anyways, so I'm just kind of wondering like what it does though, but thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Or Samantha, sorry, wrong person. Any other questions
I have a
go ahead, Israel.
You were saying that the school tests or identifies and evaluates for the IEPs. Now, do you need a referral or a diagnosis from their doctor?
So that's a great question. Legally, you do not need a diagnosis from a doctor for some of the identifications. What we would say is that we would not want to identify a kid without a diagnosis, right? And in best practice, you're not going to say, I think this kid has ADHD when you don't have a medical professional backing it up. So we like to work in collaboration with doctors and say, let's work together, let's bring this together, we can give educational identification, we can't give a diagnosis. Does that answer?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead, Shane.
So just to follow up, the school, though, may do a cognitive test, an academic test, and may identify a student with a learning disability.
Correct.
But something like ADHD, which would fall under the other health impairment identification, would require a doctor's note.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, Shane. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Go ahead, Retta.
This is mostly a comment, and it goes to the middle school, but also to the other schools. And I think Brian alluded to this yesterday regarding succession planning. I think the school board is very aware that we've got a lot of administrators and teachers that will be retiring. And I think part of the role of having the multiple administrators is some of those roles can be duplicated and they can prepare new staff that are coming in. We've got a lot of new teachers coming in and having that role. So that's something that the board is thinking about. So we're not suffering a big brain drain when we lose a really top administrator that
Are you
we're
calling
starting.
me old?
Brain drain. Thank you, Retta. Anyone else for Mountain View? Peter, go ahead.
I just had a question. Is there anything you can speak to in terms of next year, that bubble that you guys are anticipating for 5th grade? In terms of like challenges that I know it's just a 1-year thing, right? We've kind of all experienced this 4th grade this year, 5th grade next year. But that is a pretty large bubble coming in. Any challenges you're anticipating? Staffing, space, just in terms of, I also think of the challenge of like, you have 5th graders and you have 8th graders, which are, very different developmentally. So any challenges you can speak to for next year?
Sure. So 18 students over 3 teams. It is an increase in class size, but not significant. The 7th grade bubble that we got this past year in 7th grade from New Boston also increased class sizes for a year, and the same going into 8th grade. But again, between accelerated classes and algebra classes, we're able to kind of wiggle things around so that it's not I don't know if I want to call it a burden, but so that it's not.
It's manageable.
Yeah.
Got it. It doesn't
It's
reach that
manageable.
threshold where it's like, oh, I have to actually
No.
change the way we're utilizing space or anything like that.
No.
Last year I was a 7th grade teacher at the middle school with that larger class,
Yeah.
and it meant a couple more kids in the class, but in like the age range of 7th grade, 8th grade, it wasn't like something that was too challenging for us.
So not a big concern for 5th grade next year either, at least at this point.
I will let Mrs. Milligan answer.
No, it's a few students per classroom, but again, I think with the teachers that we have right now, the support that I think we're okay. It's not significant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else for Mountain View? All right, seeing none, thank you guys.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, now it's the high school.
So now we're gonna go from 4 people to 3, but it's really just gonna be Mrs. McCann.
I debated just saying, here's Kim, so we're going to go a little more fancy than that tonight. Good evening. Some themes that you've heard, we'll try to be succinct, but I would like to say I appreciate our school board very, very much. I appreciate our budget committee very, very much, and I think this collaboration is critically important. And as the years go on, I think it gets more important. I think the votes matter when people go to the ballot box. They want to know what you all think, so we appreciate that. Kim clearly is our CFO in a lot of things at Goffstown High School, so she'll be doing the vast majority of the talking. You will get a chance to meet Ryan Cowett if you do not know him already. Ryan has been a spectacular teacher here, spectacular basketball coach, golf coach, and now he's our new athletic director here at Goffstown High School. We're incredibly happy to have him. One more plug before I give it over to Kim. I think the year is off to a great start. I think it was well said when you talked about the complexity of the dance in schools. I think we're off to a great start because we have an amazing staff. and that is every single person, custodian, kitchen, paras, nurses, guidance counselors, teachers, administrators. It is really, it's a complicated task. It's an important task. It's a really rewarding task, but it is not getting easier. I can clearly tell you that to educate students. So having the right players is critically important. And look forward to answering questions if you have questions for me and or Ryan, but basically it is going to be Tim's show. That's how Goffstown High School rolls, and it's worked well for us for a long time.
Good evening, thank you. As you can see, this year we had an operating budget at the high school of roughly $15.2 million. And as we look to next year, including the base, new requests, it is looking to be closer to $15.9 million. Much of that are contractual obligations. And the $100,000 that's referenced in new spending, what you're going to see when we look at this though, is that none of it is new in terms of staffing or programs or furniture. It really is new from the perspective of costs have gone up. And if we're going to continue to do what we've been doing, these are the associated costs with continuing down that road. The one kind of new piece that we'll talk about is a field trip that we brought forward last year, and then with the default, it did not move forward. But other than that, we really are looking to maintain our current status quo with what we're doing here at the high school. Enrollments, looking at high school enrollment is a little different than looking at the other schools because students are not distributed by grade level here. With the exception of a handful of courses, almost all of our classes are multi-grade students, and students annually select their courses based on their interests and what they're looking to pursue academically, what their various interests are, and so we are building a schedule annually from the ground up based on those student interests. And that gives us a different level of flexibility as well when we're looking at our staffing and our staffing needs every year. And that's why when you look at class sizes, what we're sharing with you is a wide sample across all of our departments. Because we start in January, believe it or not. We meet with all of the students. We talk about and remind them of graduation requirements. We talk about their future plans and how their course selection is going to impact that. Students have time to review the program of studies with their families. They have time to discuss what they're going to take the following year with teachers. They all have a 15 to 20 minute sit down one-on-one with their school counselor to discuss what their plans are, where they are in their graduation requirements, and what they're looking for the future. They input all of those requests, and then we take and we analyze all of that data. So we look at the fact that 250 kids want to take biology. All right, so how many sections of that is there? We do that with all of the courses in each department. We compare that to how many personnel we have and how many sections we can offer. And then in areas where we're not necessarily seeing the same level of interest, as we have retirements, resignations, we look at, all right, do we need to replace these individuals? What are the student demands, or are there other areas where we can shift that personnel? And so one of the things you're going to see on our current staffing sheet, for those of you who've been doing this for a few years, is we actually have fewer full-time equivalents here at the high school. And that's based on a combination of student interest as well as challenges currently in hiring staff in particular areas. So we've tried to get creative in how we're using our staff and how we are filling positions at the high school. An example I would give is that this particular spring, it was very challenging to find business educators. What we chose to do was use individuals in the building who had significant background and experience in different areas. So we have a wide range of social studies teachers, for example, who had some niche pieces with their background in economics and business, and we were able to have a number of those teachers teach partially in the social studies department and pick up the needed business classes that students wanted while not hiring additional staff. Other than that, our staffing has remained very level here at the high school in terms of our paraprofessionals, administrative assistants, our administrative team, and our custodial staff as well. Questions? And so as we get into changes, you're going to see a lot of similar lines that you've heard from the other buildings. So the laptop lease, so there's an increase with that. And then, as we've said, it's all increased costs for what we have in place already. One of those areas, and Ryan can talk more in depth about it, is some of the increases in our athletic costs.
So we were told at the state meeting that for the first time in close to 15 years, the NHIAA will now charge an additional $100 per school next year for membership, and then also an additional $50 per varsity team next year for membership. So that increases our fee of about $1,900 going into next season, just to be a member of the state organization and for our kids to participate in events.
And then as with everything else, we're just seeing increases in costs for personnel to manage games, manage different events and activities. Dues and fees are going up, not just with the NHIAA, but with some of our other co-curricular organizations as well. So you see that increase here. And as we go on to the next page, it's all of the increased costs associated with facilities that you have heard from with the other buildings as well. And then on the last page for the high school, there is some increases with costs for field trips. And the big one here is, we had talked about this last year, was a physics day field trip. This is a trip that students have taken for many, many years at Goffstown High School. It integrates our 9th grade physical science class, our physics students, our AP physics students, and historically it's a day at Canopy Lake of experiential learning. Once upon a time, some of us can remember when it was like $15 to send the kids to this for the day. It is now over $30 a student. And so that has really become prohibitive for a number of students and families, and our science department does feel very strongly that it's an integral part of the curriculum, and we wanted all students to be able to participate, which is why we had brought it forward last year as new spending in the budget. And it had moved right through the process, and then when we went to default, it was one of the pieces that came out. So we are bringing it forward again this year with the hopes of it being able to happen and be part of the curriculum and the experience that all students are guaranteed to have. And that is as exciting as the high school budget proposal gets for next year. So we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. What is your participation rate in the physics day field trip?
Yeah, so when we send that group, it's about 350 students.
Okay. Okay, and I guess I want to ask kind of a more philosophical question. Last year, our budgets were both defeated on the town and the school side, and a lot of, like, from what I heard from the public is like, you know, our tax rates going up too high, too fast. Like, I'm hearing from people like, you know, like, pump the brakes a little bit. Was there a conversation about maybe not coming back with the exact same budget requests and maybe, like, not including some things, trying to tighten our belt a little bit more? I guess I'm wondering, like, what the thought process is for requesting the same thing again after, you know, the school budget went down by only 50 votes.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, you know, other than the field trip, we took out a lot of the other, and we have continued to maintain and operate with a lot of our lines staying flat now for 3, 4, 5 years, even though the cost of those same products has been going up. So I definitely understand and appreciate and hear that, Joe, but I actually think we are operating kind of below where we had been based on that piece. You know, we're not, when we have X number of dollars for textbooks, for example, and that has stayed pretty consistent, but the costs of those materials have gone up 10 to 15% in that same window, we are tightening our belts. And can we always continue to look at that? Absolutely. And are we going to continue to work with all of you to get a budget that the community supports and is going to approve? Yes.
Have we thought about, I just have two more. Have we
Yeah.
thought about the funding of Physics Day, cutting it down to maybe students that qualify for free and reduced price lunch instead? So that you're still funding the needs, but like for the families that can swing the $30 for a trip, they would be able to do it. I guess I'm wondering, like, what was the thought process around funding every student and not just maybe the ones that are in the need?
I think part of it is trying to minimize students feeling other, quite honestly, to some degree. I think we have always done the best we can to say to students and families when we're offering experiences outside of the classroom, ask us for help. I don't feel all those families do. We see a surge in absences on those days. We have a number of students who always, you know, say, "Oh, I'm not interested, I don't want to go." The challenge with using free and reduced lunch as a benchmark is that the only person who has that information is the food service director. So it's tricky.
Okay.
Yep. And I
Thank
wish
you.
everyone who needed the assistance would ask for it, and we could feel better about some of those pieces.
Okay, and then my last question is about the books for the GHS Media Center. Didn't we just cut down the amount of books in the Media Center by like a lot?
That was every year, or, you know, I shouldn't say every year, but every couple of years, a library would review their books that they have, or it's not just books, it's all materials. It could be CDs, you name it, and they look at what is being circulated, and if it's not being circulated over a certain period of time, they're supposed to curate that and call, you know, what hasn't been used. It wasn't done for a really long time.
Yep.
So the current media specialist here did that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need as many books and other materials, but it just means that it was just weeded.
So was there always a budget for books?
Yes, always.
So what was the budget for books, and why do we need 2,000 more if she can use, or they can use the budget that currently is there?
Because you can no longer buy the same number of books that you used to. So hypothetically, I'm just gonna throw that out. If you were buying 300 books with X amount of dollars, now you can only buy 250 books with that same amount. So it's just the inflationary cost of books and other medium going up to try to stay level almost with the quantity that you're purchasing.
Scott, could I use that as an opportunity too?
Yeah.
When I was saying like all the people I was thinking, oh, I do this all the time, but I was thinking, oh, I forgot media specialist. And one of the great staff members here, Jen Boschman, who's our library media specialist, who helped facilitate all the weeding. It's unbelievable how by removing a lot of books that hadn't been touched for a long time, displaying books in a different fashion, and she's really been hyper-focused working with our preps, which is study halls, if you will, and our numbers are going up and up and up of the amount of kids who are reading. So there is more demand for the books as well. It's been a real, I would say, point of pride this year that it's real. She's done with others, but a spectacular job.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go back to Joe's question about the physics day or field trip? Has there been a thought or approach where you engage the students for a fundraiser? So we have a firm believer of like ownership of the students. I think it means more versus maybe going, asking for a new spend.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways that
Yeah.
we can do it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Field trips and fundraising, there's definitely some policy pieces that we would have to look at with that, but we can definitely continue to look at options, and we do. I think the reality is we do a lot to support and work with students in different fashion.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Thanks, Brian. Go ahead, Olivia.
How many area schools participate in the Physics Day?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. It's massive. They offer multiple opportunities. In the spring, I think there's 4 or 5 different dates, and
And not
it's
just New
packed.
Hampshire.
It's not, yeah.
There's a
Yep,
lot of Massachusetts
as
schools.
well, yeah.
Okay, and it's the same age range?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then can I do
Yeah,
one
go
more?
for it.
As far as the library books go, I know during the tour, it was discussed how the display that you just brought up again, that it's really increased participation in numbers. Do you feel like renewing the, not renewing, but purchasing new and up-to-date books kind of pulls more kids into being interested in reading?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it really, it's noticeable, and it's just ironic. This morning, as we were watching kids passing between periods, the number of kids that had books in their hand that were not part of what we know they're doing in their English classes, right? That they were carrying through the halls, we actually commented on just how much we are seeing of independent reading this year with students.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. Go ahead, Laura.
Just a quick comment. It has to do with the books, but just kind of in general. To remember, like, schools are never, like, done, right? It's not like we have all our supplies, we have all the books, we're finished. It's continuously growing and changing as things change, society changes, technology changes. And, like, the library is part of that, along with, you know, just increasing costs of toilet paper. Books increase as well. So it's that not even barely keeping up, but it's not like, okay, you have the books in the library, you have the computers in the classroom, we're finished, right? It's always, it has to change and grow to keep up with the needs of everyone in society, basically.
Thank you, Laura. Go ahead, Caroline.
So I think just one thing to keep in mind is we try to make things like equitable for all different, you know, individuals and their interests. And so the science department wanting to do this field trip, it's important to them. We don't question the athletics going up or what is necessary for that. We like to make sure theater is well supported as well. We talked about that over the last couple of years. But I think coming back with this request a second year in a row, knowing that it was voted down last year, just shows how important it is to the staff and to the students who have experienced it, and to say, we want this, it's important, and, you know, we want to make sure that our students are able to benefit from it. So I think that, you know, it's important to look at it that way as well, and not just the other ways that it could be supported. I think it's important to look at what this group of students who are really into science could benefit from in our own state.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Samantha.
So the increase of the co-curricular dues and fees, and then the increase of the NHAA school membership, I realize that those numbers are part of like a larger whole. What happens if we don't pay those? Like
Well,
if we
athletics-
choose not to participate in NHAA?
Let's start with athletics.
Yeah.
If we don't participate in the NHIAA, we don't have the ability to run an athletics program.
Okay, so we don't
So
get
we
to-
could probably do like intramural, but not structured formal competition between schools.
Okay, and so am I also correct in thinking that that would probably really negatively impact a lot of students' ability to get scholarships?
Oh, that's an understatement.
Okay.
And just kids, for a lot of kids, athletics is the hook to keep them engaged in school. So we try to meet kids where they are, whether it's they're into performing arts, they're into athletics, whatever, they're into academics and academic-based clubs. We want to give those kids a full, well-rounded experience at Goffstown High School.
And is the co-curriculars dues and fees, that's kind of the everything but sports section? Okay. That's my
That's a good way to say it.
That's my section.
Non-athletic co-curricular, and those are the two distinctions, right?
Yeah.
In the process. So function 1410 is all the non-athletic co-curriculars, and 1420 are all your athletic expenses.
Which is also an incredible amount of scholarship opportunities for students and you know, like photography club, I'm sure there's photography scholarships. If we don't participate in that, then we can't join the, you know, you don't have a photography club really.
Yeah, there's different state organizations that, so for example,
Might be a bad
the New Hampshire Music Educators Association, there are fees associated with that, but that's what allows our students to participate in audition for Allstate and have that opportunity for recognition. And if we're not members, the students aren't able to participate in that venue and have that opportunity as well.
And then I guess a follow-up question, because I am familiar with Allstate.
Yeah.
Do you know how much fundraising those students already participate in?
So what's really great is that currently, all of you have been incredibly supportive of that. So once upon a time, students were selected for Allstate, and it was a wonderful honor to go represent the school at that level. They were writing a check for $225 to do that. And now students who are selected to participate, those are part of the dues and fees. And
Okay.
we cover that expense.
But, I mean, they still do like the wreath selling and the cookie dough selling and all that fun stuff for
Yeah,
like trying.
Samantha, I was gonna mention that, is that easily tens of thousands, and I don't know, it would not surprise me, we're probably well over $100,000 from this school in terms of what is raised by booster clubs, fundraisers, et cetera.
Volunteers.
Volunteers
Yeah.
to support. You'll recall, we started a Mountain View football program that's funded for the next 3 years completely by the Grizzly Gridiron Football Booster Club.
Yeah.
But they're almost every single sport, I think, it almost seems like it, all but maybe 2 or 3, all have a booster club where, you know, they financially support the student athletes. Same thing, even on some of the non-athletic. So I will share with you that athletics and co-curriculars are partially supported, or not fully supported by the budget. A lot of it is funded by fundraising and parents and boosters and you name it. So
Yeah, I just think that it's interesting when we have this conversation about the ownership that the kids take for some of these things, that they are already doing that. Like, you know, I can't tell you how many like football kids I saw running around with those little cards being like, oh, you buy this card, it's $25 and it'll get you like half off a Subway sandwich. And I'm like, I don't go to Subway? Sure. Like, I will have this, thank you. I don't really want it, right? Not me. But I think it's important that we talk about, like, not to like nitpick their little budget, but they're asking for a small part of what their larger whole is, you know? That they take responsibility for, so, thanks.
Thank you, Samantha. Shane had his hand up, and then Laura. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Shane.
My comment's actually almost an addendum to Caroline's. The school board's been encouraging all schools to introduce field trips and opportunities for all students to learn outside the classroom. Since I've been on the board, we've been very encouraging of that and very supportive of that. So I applaud the high school administration for trying to get this back in, again, because I think providing this opportunity for the students will make sure that all students have the access to it. So I thank you guys for trying to get this back in.
Thank you, Shane. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, to piggyback off that, just so people watching at home and the general public know, tax dollars are not paying for everything. There's still the $10 for this the parents pay. They need to go pick up the student because they got the ride there on the bus, but they don't get a ride home on the bus, or they need some kind of nonsense shirt to wear to a chorus thing that you have to buy. So it's not like we're supporting all of these activities in every way for everyone. And it's important, I think, for the community to say, we believe these things are important such that we are going to pay and help with this portion to support our public schools. We know you guys have the other things that parents are definitely paying for, students even have jobs and are definitely paying for.
Thank
Which
you,
sends
Laura.
a good message.
Any other questions, Olivia? Go ahead.
Just one quick thing. I was just hoping for people that are still overwhelmed and confused by something like an $8,700 field trip, if you could speak on the impact of actual physical participation and involvement for kids in situations like the field trip or an athletic team or a theater production, and the benefit that that can have in the learning experience for all of them.
Yeah, I think the two biggest things that come out of those experiences that are a little different and outside the classroom are increased engagement, connection, as well as a growth in a sense of community within the school and really feeling connected to the school. I think we continue to look for access points to get students excited about different academic areas. I think that to some degree, math and science are some really good examples. I think that we still have a very different perception around the ability to be successful in math and science than we do on the humanities side culturally. I think we've probably all sat at tables where people have kind of glibly said, well, I wasn't good at math, right? And we're very okay and we're comfortable with that. But we would never say that about reading, right? We would never say, ooh, I wasn't a good reader. But for some reason, we have that with math and science. And so getting students connected, excited, engaged, and doing things where they really feel they're a part of that content area and that they can have success can be very dynamic in changing their mindset moving forward. And then that ability to be with their peers in a different setting can also have a huge positive impact for both connectivity to their peers, the larger school, feeling a part of the larger community. So those are definitely a lot of the reasons you do those co-curriculars and you look for those experiential opportunities outside of the traditional four walls of a classroom.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Frank.
Could I ask, when was the last Goffstown Physics Day that we participated in?
Yeah, so it's going to be, we didn't go last year. The year before, we were able to do it, so
22?
we were able to go in 22. Yep, we were able to, because of other trips and expenses that as we were kind of coming out of the pandemic had not been reinstituted, there was funding to support it. Prior to that, it would have been 2019.
So the last was 22, prior to that was 2019.
Yeah, and pretty consistently before that, they had done it. The biggest factor to some degree truly has been the rise in costs. I mean, I'm not kidding when I say once upon a time, it was $10 or $15 a head to go. So if anyone knows anyone at the Canopy Lake Park, get us a better discount, yes. And I know I was shocked when when we first looked to start going back to it post-pandemic and what the cost was. To me, it kind of felt like this is an event that you're putting on for schools. Maybe you're not charging full admission price, but.
Frank, are you all set?
I was just going to say, so right now it's $30 a student, and the reason why they didn't go in 2023 was they didn't have the funding.
Yeah.
Were there any committees or anybody put anything together like, fundraising or a car wash, right? Were there any attempts to that?
Not last year, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Peter, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm exasperated that we've been talking about $8,000 for half an hour, frankly. Can I ask Scott, between the budget from last year and the base this year, we're talking about $620,000. Do you have a sense of what a lot of that increase is? I feel like I remember, this is just like bringing me back to the olden days when we would sit and just argue. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't talk about little stuff, but like, we're literally talking about $620,000 between the base of this year and last year within this budget. And we've been spending that amount of time talking about $9,000.
It really goes back to that, one of those initial slides when Brian and I were explaining the budget, and 78% of our budget is salary and benefits.
Yep.
We have more staff here at the high school, and we have, a lot of staff at the middle school.
So is that an increase in cost?
So
in those
you're
benefits?
seeing, no, we have
Salary.
contractual obligations, you have teacher, and support staff contracts that have been approved by the voters. So with those come salary increases, and then there's the
Benefits.
increase in the benefits, and that's the lion's share of it, in terms of the default. You also then, in terms of, so that's really where, in terms of those default type increases, everything else has to then be new. So whether that be energy costs or, maintenance and things like that, but, Kim demonstrates, it's in your presentation in terms of the repair costs are increasing here. This is an older building, and, let's be honest, I mean, we spend quite a bit on repairs. We just recently replaced a hot water heater, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, we ended up getting different bids, and I'm like, I was astonished, at how much it costs to replace a water heater. I haven't done it in my house in a while, but, this was a commercial one, but I'm getting a little nervous when I have to replace mine. So, we're no different. It costs a lot of money just to do a simple thing like replace a water heater, but it's mostly contractual, Peter.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask just a quick follow-up? Yeah. I forgot my pamphlet today, so I got a handy-dandy other pamphlet, which means I accidentally got state numbers too, which was awesome to look through. We are below state average on salary, correct? Just
Yeah,
below.
we're right, we
Currently, do you
right
think we'll
around
be there?
50%.
Do you think we'll be above next year based on the fact that?
Probably not. It's hard to say, but it's a moving target.
Okay.
We negotiate, we're currently in a 4-year teacher contract, so it's hard to say, but other communities are negotiating with their teachers and ultimately what those voters approve. So it's a moving target.
Thank you.
Are you
I
all
need to
set?
get that back, because I was top secret, I'm only kidding.
State information.
While you
Get
say
out
that,
of
no, I
here.
said, I'm just joking. You just reminded me, because I forgot to put this up on the website, so I will have the school board's packet on the school district website tomorrow. So whatever, you'll get a
Updated.
revised, updated one, but everybody will have access to not only these presentations, but the exact same packet that the school board received, you will get. I forgot to hit the print button, but I did queue it up in my copier. So Joe provided me information on education freedom accounts. I will also share that with the community as well. It was 47, and the cost was in the $280,000-$90,000 range, okay? So the one thing that I believe that the school board, school district takes pride in is that we're transparent in terms of what's going on. That's why I included those state statistics. But I want to also reiterate that if you go onto the New Hampshire Department of Education website, iPlatform, iExplore, it has a lot of ability to compare different school districts against the state average, compare districts amongst themselves, as just an abundance of information that I would encourage you to look at.
All right, thank you, Scott. So Laura, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. So the information that Joe provided, are we gonna have a chance at a meeting to look at it and either discuss or whatever, or is that just gonna be posted on a website?
So I had sent that, because I had some updated information, I had sent that to Brian and Scott, just in an email, giving them a heads up, because I think Scott quoted 8.
Yeah, that was homeschool. I apologize.
Okay,
That was
yeah,
homeschool
so,
students.
I just wanted to give them updated 47, but they'll print it, and we can talk about it at the next meeting.
I'd like to, because I know we had questions that didn't really get answered about that. I wondered what the 8 was, and now we'll have the information.
Yeah.
So in that board packet.
It's on the Education, Department of Ed website.
I know,
Abstract information.
but I think it's important we talk about it, and so people at home know, too.
In the board
That's part of
packet, it was, people had asked in the past, how many homeschool students? And again, that's a tough number, but the state, according to the state's numbers, it's 8. I don't know,
That's not accurate.
It doesn't seem right, but that's what's in their report.
That's not accurate, so not that.
So is
Like,
there any other questions for the high school? I know we've talked a lot, but I also want to make sure that everybody is asking or commenting on stuff that is important to them. This physics thing was something that came up last year, so I appreciate all the comments and questions. So I want to make sure that everybody has been able to say or ask what they need before we move on. Is everybody good? Go ahead, Laura.
So do we have, because we don't have another joint meeting,
Nope, this is it.
because there's information that I thought it would have been important to talk about as the whole group of us, and we won't get a chance to do that until like the presentation that the public is involved in, correct?
Well, I mean, the next thing on the agenda is any other business that may come before the meeting. So if you are a
No, but
member of
like
this
if,
committee.
if the info that you guys didn't bring, but you have, if we wanted to discuss that, among anything else.
I actually don't know that it, I mean, I think it's, I appreciate Joe sending that last night. Joe's always very good about making sure that Scott and I have information, so I appreciated that. I don't know how relevant that really is going to be to the budget committee. I mean, I'm happy to talk about my ideological and philosophical differences with the program. I'm happy to talk about the lack of fiscal oversight, but at this point, it really doesn't matter. So EFAs exist. There's a financial cap that families have to have. I'm sure there's legislative intent to remove that cap. That's what we fully expect the next legislative session to be, and I'm sure that LSRs have already been submitted. But really, you guys aren't going to do anything as a budget committee with respect to EFA accounts. So,
And that's fine, that's very reasonable. I just want to make sure, and I guess that was just one example of if people have different information, it's really important, and we hear all the time, transparency, transparency. And I do believe this is all very transparent, so I'm not saying that it's not at all. But as far as other information that would help voters understand different things, or because part of our job, I believe, as budget committee is to make sure we transfer the information to the public, because they're the ones voting. So it doesn't help if we have more of it and are keepers of it. And maybe I'm in the minority in thinking that, so if anyone wants to
I
say.
mean, Laura,
But
my
you know-
intention was not to gatekeep this information at
no,
all.
I
I mean, I
guess-
always send it to Scott and Brian, and I know that Scott misspoke last night with the EFA, so I wanted to make sure that he had the accurate information.
And I guess that was a bad example to use. I just want to make sure we're informing the public as best as possible of all the things that go into this budget, so they really do understand and know what we have done and what the school board has done and what the SAU has done and what the town does to come to this before we present it and have an expectation of voting. That's all I'm trying to say. Maybe that was a bad example of it, but that's really all I'm trying to say.
All right, thanks, Laura. Go ahead,
I'll
Jack.
take a shot at what the voters need to know is that I did a little research after the meeting, and one of Scott's tabs that he put up was about the amount of funding that historically had happened from 2003 from the state coming to the town. So in 2003, the cost per student average in the state was $8,000, just under that. Goffstown did it at $6,500 a student. The state funded $3,200, which would be about 50% of what the adequate education was, or the education costs in 2003. 40% of the state average of $8,000. This year, they're funding $4,100 of our average cost of $16,500 and something, somewhere about 25%. The state average is $20,000. They're funding 20%. So what the voters need to know is that the state needs to fund adequate education adequately.
Thank you, Jack. Did you want to add anything?
I love that. Thank you, Jack. He's right. And of the money we get, remember, SWEPT, statewide educational property tax. What they're calling state aid is a local property tax that's collected locally, retained locally, and they call it state aid. So Jack's right. Our costs have continued to go up. The percentage that the state pays has continued to go down. The number of federal programs, federal grants, continued to go down. Everywhere we turn, the costs of education have risen and the funding continues to be eroded. So it's unfortunate that it pits communities against each other. So we spend a half an hour talking about an $8,000 item in a $55 million budget. That's fine. I'm happy to talk about that. I'm happy to talk about anything the budget committee ever wants to, but it ends up putting communities against each other. We can't pay for this on the municipal side. We want to support the police contract, but we're concerned about the cost of the school. The school doesn't know. They're talking about building a new addition because of the new developments. This is what continues to hurt communities. And I wish I could be optimistic about funding. There is no fix. There's no end in sight in this state. So I used to have hope and optimism about fixing school funding. I don't. There's no interest to fix this problem. It continues to take the courts. So I was part of the legislative testimony when the Londonderry lawsuit went through. And the outcome of the Londonderry lawsuit, after Claremont 1, after Claremont 2, the court said that it's the legislature's job to define an adequate education and to pay for it. And we don't get it. And I know Joe's working hard. I know our other state reps are working hard. Until there's a new broad-based tax of some sort in this state, there is never, ever going to be a change. And it's always going to be 70% paid at the local level.
All right, thank
Sorry.
you, Brian. That's okay. So are we done with the high school? Laura, do you have one
I have one more
more?
thing. I wasn't going to address it or talk about it tonight, but it piggybacks.
Is it
right
about
off-
the high school?
No.
Because we're still
No,
on the
it's
high
other
school.
business.
All right. So are we all done with the high school?
Just gonna keep you hostage.
Yeah,
You're
this
not
is
going
okay.
anywhere.
Kim's doing a great job.
Is there any other questions, comments for the high school team? All right, seeing none. Thank
We
you,
appreciate it.
guys.
You do, we know it's not easy. Thank you.
No, same goes for you guys. Thank you. All right, so that concludes all our presentations. Thank you all for coming tonight. You are excused to go. You don't need to stay. We're just going to finish up the board meeting. So next on agenda, Laura, go ahead.
Thank you. This will be my last thing because it does connect with what Brian said. So I spoke with someone at the New Hampshire Municipal Association because I had the question
Yep,
about
figured.
state funding and we weren't really given an answer last night. So, and I'll paraphrase because a lot of this is like sort of conversational in the email. As far as money coming from the state, and is that the same or any different than it coming from more local? So the best way to think about it is this. The state's going to generate income through things like meals and room tax, federal grants, and other areas of state revenue that we don't have at the local level. In New Hampshire, we don't have income tax or sales tax. We generate revenue primarily through property tax. The greatest impact to residents at the local level comes from adjustments to the tax rate caused by increased budgetary needs. That's what we deal with every time. So this is where people feel the most, will feel the most impact of these costs. The more money municipalities receive from the state to offset things like road maintenance, emergency services, utilities, school, the less towns need to spend on those purposes and the less money will be need to taken from them via tax. So think of it like this. Would you rather have, and this is to kind of answer the question, isn't it all the same thing? State money, local money, whatever. It could be a 0.5% increase in meals tax, for example, or a 5% increase in property tax. That was what I got from New Hampshire Municipal, and I just wanted to share that because I felt like it was an adequate answer to the question I asked last night.
Thank you, Laura. Go ahead, Joe.
So just real quick, I think Brian is entirely correct where this education funding issue is not going to be solved unless we implement a broad-based income or sales tax. That is like on the state level, that is number one, that's how it's going to be fixed. Also, the thing that we disagree with, and there is maybe disagreement in this room, is what is an adequate education? What is an adequate education? $8,700 for a physics day trip to me isn't really something where like, that is like the low bar, they absolutely need to be going to it. Like, we need to look at, as two committees, and we're gonna be separate committees during our deliberations, that we need to look at the local level of what we think is adequate. And there's disagreement on the state level. There's disagreements in the court. There's disagreement in caucuses. Like, people disagree on what an adequate education is, and I think that's like the crux of it. And then the second thing is, it's not gonna be solved unless there's a broad-based income or sales tax. So that's my 2 cents putting on my other hat.
Thank you, Joe. Go ahead, Shane.
I think you're right, Joe, but one of the things that the courts have said is that the state legislature needs to define that, which has not happened. So maybe it's because of the disagreement, but the legislature needs to do that, so.
I agree.
All right, we're about finishing
I
up. So
understand
Laura,
that.
I'm gonna let Olivia go first.
Okay.
I just had a quick question,
Yeah.
not about that. But just as far for budget specifically, how are we moving forward with the town budget stuff? Are we doing that as a combined meeting? Are we doing separate nights? How are we doing that to take the burden off the department heads?
So I had a conversation with Danielle today. I don't think, Kelly can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think timeline-wise we can make work a joint meeting, because I think that they have a different sort of deadline. At the Tuesday tour, when we go to the Parks and Rec tour, I'm gonna have a draft calendar sent out, so we'll be able to discuss that moving forward. But I think that we're gonna have town side deliberations at the beginning of December.
Okay, so we'll discuss that prior to it being
Yes.
scheduled. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. Go ahead, Laura.
No, that's fine. I'll save it for budget because I don't want to be rushed through it. I think it's important.
Okay. All right. So any other comments, questions? Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I hate when I read the minutes and then like I'm wrong on something, so I can clarify it now.
Okay.
I don't know, so you gave me that look, so I looked it up. Well, you did, you gave me the look.
I know.
Right, so.
Because it was wrong.
I know, it's wrong.
That's why you got the look.
I get the look. It's 29, according to this, it's on page 94,
However, packet.
homeschool, yeah.
I will share, though, if I may, tracking homeschool students is difficult. So here's another one, Joe. Years ago, and it wasn't all that long ago, if you homeschooled a child, you had to submit a written plan, an educational plan of what you were going to do. You had to submit lists of the materials you were going to use, and you had to submit testing at the end of the year. And your program was evaluated by the school district. That is all gone. So now parents have to notify the local superintendent one time, but they don't even have to do that. They can notify the commissioner of education. So we could have homeschool students that have never even interfaced with our SAU. There's, and again, I shared yesterday when we talked about competition. I respect competition, and I want to compete, but I want a level playing field. And in terms of homeschool parents, I'm all for homeschooling. I think it's great for a lot of kids, it does a lot of good, but there is no oversight.
Thanks, Brian. Go ahead.
And a lot of those kids still take classes in our schools.
Right, and I
Go ahead.
think, just to clarify, that on a legal level, that EFA students legally are not homeschoolers. In a practical way, they are homeschoolers, they're being schooled, but not all homeschoolers receive EFA funds, not all homeschoolers agree with EFA funds, and the same way that some people that receive EFAs use it for a private school. They're not, EFA is not strictly for homeschoolers.
Thank you, Olivia. Anyone else? You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Anyone? No? Everyone's good? All right. So we have the school board does not have non-public, so I think we're just about done. So thank you, guys.
I wanted to thank the budget
Yeah,
committee, because
this
I
is-
think that it really does help our administration
Mhm.
that we do these combined meetings. And Joe, and on behalf, I appreciate that, and I know administrators really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you and the budget committee for agreeing to do this jointly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really a
Thank you
big help.
guys for coming out.
Well said. Thank you,
And
Scott.
asking great questions and making great comments. I think the community enjoys seeing us work together and be able to get the best for them. So we appreciate it. Everyone else is good? All right, so
Is there a motion to adjourn budget committee?
So moved.
Motion by Frank, second
Second.
by who?
Israel.
Israel. All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? I'm gonna assume we're unanimous.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
all right, school board, I need a motion to adjourn. By Retta, second. By Jack. All those in favor say aye.
We got about 3
Yeah,
more.
you'll oppose or abstain. All right, thank you, guys.
GTV, we're clear.
Thanks.